Welcome to Faults Fixed, Mastering Fault Management in D365 Asset Management. My name is Marlene Baldwin, and this is my colleague, Chris Harrison. And we're here to tell you a little bit about how fault management can work for you in D365 EAM. Chris, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Chris Harrison. I'm a senior consultant at Stoneridge. Been with the company a little over a year now. A lot of experience on the supply chain side and implementing asset management. So excited about what we have to present today.
Great. And my name is Marlene Baldwin. Like I said, I am also a senior consultant in the client experience team. I have over 20 years experience with business analysis and process management, and also 8 years of background with general Microsoft Dynamics. I dabble in everything. And I've been with Stoneridge about 5 years. Many companies use D365 Asset Management. They use it to plan and track their preventive and corrective maintenance on their equipment. We're focusing specifically today on how you can use fault management to enhance that process. We're going to talk about how fault management is configured, some of the decisions that you might make when you're setting this up in your environment and why. We'll also demonstrate the maintenance request and work order lifecycle, including the fault management process, and show you some of the key data you can get out of it. Lastly, of course, we want to hear from you. Are you using fault management today? Do you like fault management? Do you have questions about it? If you're not using it, how do you think it would benefit you? So moving right along, let's talk about how to configure fault management. There are a number of different elements that you can configure when it comes to fault management. The first thing you want to specify is what the symptoms are that you are going to encounter when your equipment is in a fault state. Things like, are you hearing excessive noise, or are there bad smells, or is the engine misfiring? It could be anything depending on what type of equipment you're working with. Those fault symptoms get classified into fault areas. Typical areas would include mechanical failures, hydraulic failures, or electrical failures. Anything that would indicate this is where we're going to go to figure out what is broken. Then you can also add types, which give you, depending on your particular need, you can use this to indicate how serious the fault is. Is it causing damage to the equipment? Is it hazardous to workers? Is it a catastrophic failure where equipment might need to be completely replaced? Or you can use that as a prioritization tool to say, how important is it that we fix this right away? Those three first items, the symptoms, areas, and types, really speak to your maintenance request area. What is the person on the floor seeing? And why are they asking for maintenance on this item? Then once you do the maintenance and you're able to solve the problem, you can document what were the fault causes. Was this caused by wear and tear, negligence, bad fuses, malfunctioning spark plugs? Any number of things can cause faults in your equipment. And then also, what was the remedy? Did you fix it? Did you, put in spare parts? Did you replace the asset entirely? All five of these areas can be customized completely to fit your business. And then you can use that to pull out data that will allow you to make smarter decisions, both when you're managing and prioritizing your work orders and when you're reviewing and assessing the performance of your assets. Go ahead and do the next slide. In the process flow for work orders, you're going to find that, as I mentioned with the symptoms, your operator is going to identify a requirement for corrective maintenance. This is where the faults occur. That's on the floor, on the day-to-day job, something broke down, something doesn't seem right. So they're going to submit a maintenance request. In the maintenance request, they will include that fault information. They will tell you what their symptoms are, and then they will submit that maintenance request through your normal process. Then, when that comes into the maintenance team, the person reviewing the requests and making work orders can actually look at the history associated with that asset to see, are there recurring issues that we've had? Do we know how to fix this already? Do we know who needs to fix it already? It really allows them to uh, drill down into the problem with a little bit more detail so that they can get the right person and the right equipment to fix it on the job faster. Then once the work order is created, the maintenance rep will go out and do the work. And when they do that work, they will record their causes and resolutions. And when that work order closes out, now you have a full circle picture of this was what happened with the asset. This is how we fixed it. And then going down the road, you'll be able to see that history when new maintenance requests come in. And go ahead and go to the next slide. On the back end, how do we use this information to make life better? You get event history on assets. You can do inquiries on your assets to see what faults happen most and on which assets. You can also do all of these inquiries and do all of this analysis by location. So for example, if you have a particular functional location where you're seeing faults happen over and over, but you have identical equipment at another location, there may be something specific to that location that's causing these faults. So it helps you get a better picture overall of your suite of assets and helps you make decisions about how to maintain them. Or are you looking at a particular brand or manufacturer of assets that you're seeing more failures with? Perhaps you want to assess that to determine if you want to go to a different solution. But all of those things are available in our inquiries and reports. Of course, what we all want to see is how that works. So I'm going to hand that off to you, Chris, if you can give us a demo.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's dig into the system and take a look at the information that Marlene was just talking about. So we're going to start off by looking at the setup pieces that would be needed to get fault management into place. After we've looked at how you would need to set everything up, we're then going to just see it in action, like Marlene just went through with those different steps. We're going to look at maintenance requests. We're going to look at how faults get used on there, and then we'll drill into the work order side of it and just, again, see how the faults are used there, and then look at the reporting as a final piece. So let's get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my modules, and I'm going to start in the asset management module. And then under asset management, I'm going to go to setup. Within setup, there is going to be a fault section. So this is where all of the settings will be for the different types of symptoms, areas, types, causes, remedies that you're going to want to have as a option to choose. I'm going to go ahead and click on the fault symptoms. And as you can see, it's going to be a predefined list. So when the person entering the maintenance request or the person working on the work order, when they want to start using these fault settings, they're going to have to choose something that exists in this drop-down list that you're looking at exact for the fault symptoms right now. If it doesn't exist in this list, it's going to have to be added to the list. So as you can see, some of the symptoms we already have in the system are air leaks and blown fuses and excessive noises and just other things that people have, seen in symptoms in the different assets that we're looking at. So for this example, I'm going to be looking at a vehicle. And there's going to be a problem with the vehicle that someone's going to report. And the problem that they're going to see is that the steering wheel is shaky. So they're going to be reporting that and going through the different steps of how all that information can be entered. So I'm going to go ahead and just enter that in as a fault symptom since I know I'm going to be using it here in a few moments in my demonstration. So like most normal screens in D365, I'm going to click on the new to enter a new option or have a new row pop up. And then for my fault symptom, I'm going to say shaky steering wheel. And then my description can be the same or it can have more information, whatever makes the most sense for how you want to enter this in. All right, cool. So at that point in time, I now have a new symptom that I've entered. So the next thing I need to do is make sure that the area that this is going to need to be placed in exists in the system as well. So if I click on the fault areas, again, all the pre-existing values are in the list that we've already had entered in the system. The same thing when you're entering this fault information in, you got to make sure that area is already in that list, or if they're not, then you're gonna have to add it at that time so it can be added. So we got battery and brakes and electrical in different areas so far. So this time I'm going to go ahead and just put that this is an internal type of an area within the system. The steering was inside the car. So for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to say we're going to classify that as an internal area. The same thing, type in my area, type in my description. Again, it can be more meaningful, however you want to enter that in. I'm going to save it. And then the next option I'm going to choose is the fault type. So as Marlene mentioned, the fault type can be used to just help classify, the severity of the fault, further information about the type of fault that it is. So you can see we have catastrophic as a severity, or damaging as a severity, or an engine idling control system, or an ignition control system. So the type can kind of be a little fuzzy and kind of be used for where you think it most makes sense for how you're setting up the system. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a steering control in as a new type that we're going to enter in as we enter the fault information on the maintenance request. So I'll put steering control. And again, description can be more meaningful, or for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to make it the exact same thing. Save that. All right, got my symptom, got my area, got my type. Now, when you start figuring out, what the cause was and what you fixed, or what the fix was, that's where the causes and remedies come into play. So I'm going to go ahead and just add the cause that we're going to put in during our test. So same thing, a pre-existing list that has to exist. When you're entering it in, if it's not in, you'll have to add or enter it in at that point in time. So we got bad alternator, clogged air filters, dead batteries, again, just pre-existing things that have been put in the past. So this time I'm going to put that the issue was that the wheels weren't aligned. So I'm going to say the wheel alignment was our root cause for why we had the shaky steering wheel. Save that. And then the last piece that would need to be entered in is what the remedy was. If I click on that, this would be what actually, was the fix that resolved the issue. So maybe it was cleaned, maybe a new something new was put in, maybe it was just a repair, maybe something was replaced, maybe there's routine maintenance done, whatever that remedy is going to be. And I like this list. I'm not going to change this list into anything new, but it'd be like what we saw on the previous pages where you just click the new button and you'd add something new in. So once you have your values added of the symptoms, areas, types, causes, and remedies, you now have to tell D365 what asset types are these going to go against, because not all of these symptoms and areas and types and so on make sense for each of your different asset types. So I'm going to go to the fault designer, and these are the asset types that we currently have in our system. So I'm going to go down to vehicle. So in vehicle, you can see that we have our different symptoms that are relevant for a vehicle, the different areas that are relevant for our vehicle, and our different types that are relevant to our vehicle. So the way we have the system set up right now is we have turned on the fault hierarchy in the system. So the way that's going to work is as I click on any given symptom, I have to specify what areas, and then for an area, what types are relevant. So it's going to be a one-to-one relationship. So if you see, if I go to squeaky brakes, now it's going to tell me that brakes and tires are my two fault areas. And then my fault types, again, go to my area. So brakes is hazardous and routine maintenance, where tires is damaging, and then so on and so on and so on. So it's a one-to-one-to-one relationship. And just to show you, if you want to use it in this feature or in this way, what you'd have to do is you'd have to go to your license management under setup, system administration, setup, license configuration, and then under asset management, you're going to turn this fault hierarchy on. Now, if you weren't using the fault hierarchy, then all symptoms, all areas, and all types are can be used interchangeably. So let me show you a quick example of that. So this is how it would look then. Like if I'm on noisy engine here, you can see I have all my areas, all my fault types. If I go to squeaky brakes, you can see nothing changed, because any symptom can go with any area, which can go to any type. Again, all set up by a given asset type.
And that's definitely a planning decision.
Yep.
Because if you have one battery fault area, you have several symptoms that could point to the battery, you're going to run into trouble, right, because you can only select the battery in that fault area section one time.
Correct.
So making those decisions is going to be important if you decide to turn on the hierarchy.
Correct. Yep. So let's go ahead and add our combination of the shaky steering wheel and the internal and the steering control that we added. So I'm going to put in my fault symptom. I'm going to add a line, and I'm going to look for the shaky steering wheel. All right. And then you can see I don't have any areas or any types set up right now. So in the fault area, I'm going to go and click add. And this time I'm going to add an interior. Internal, I guess I called it internal. We'll keep internal. And then in the fault type, I'm going to add a line, and I'm going to put in the steering control. All right, there's my combination. And as Marlene mentioned, if you look at like squeaky brakes, I think it was, where hazardous was used as a fault type. If I wanted hazardous to also be an option for my shaky steering wheel, because maybe it's a hazardous condition that it's shaky, if I add the line and try to put hazardous in here and then save it, it's going to yell at me because, as she mentioned, that hazardous already exists under the squeaky brakes. So again, this is one of the limitations to the one-to-one that combination or that fault type can only exist in one instance. Where on the other instance where we showed you that all the symptoms, all the areas, all the types can be used interchangeably, you want to get this error message. So again, something to think about.
Yeah, depending on how granular you want to make it. I mean, you could sit down and write it all out so that it works that way. And that might make sense for your business. So it's just it's good that we have both options.
Yep. All right, so that's a setup for the different symptoms and areas and all that, and then tying them to the asset type. A couple other setup things that I want to show real quick is once you have all of this set up and the way that you want it, the next thing you have to do is you're going to have to first go to asset management parameters. And then underneath there, we're going to click on the work order tab. And on the work order tab, there is this copy faults yes, no button here. What this does for you is it will allow you to copy any of the fault information that you enter on a maintenance request to a work order. So if you click yes there, it's going to copy it over. If you put no there, then it's not going to copy that fault information for a maintenance request to a work order. So again, something else to consider of how you want faults to move between the two. A couple other setup things to look at is under the jobs, we're going to go to, under work orders, we're going to look at the work order types. And under work order types, for any of the given work order types, you have the mandatory options over here. So right here, you can decide if you want to make a fault symptom, a fault cause, or a fault remedy mandatory for this type of work order. So right now for billable, they're all set to no. So we would not make it a mandatory entry of this stuff for a billable work order type. But as you can see for corrective, we would say yes, that you got to put the fault symptom, you got to put the fault cause, and you got to put the fault remedy. And if you don't, you can give them an error message or a warning or whatever you want to be displayed. So that's the first part of it. Work order type, determine if they're going to be mandatory or not. The second piece of that is with the life cycle states of a work order. You got to specify at each of the individual states, you can specify whether or what type of reaction there's going to be if they don't enter that stuff in. So under the validate option, you can see we have fault symptom, fault cause, and fault remedy. So in this case, in the completion, if they don't enter something in, then we are going to present an error message for these three options. If it's finished, you can see that we've got them to no, and we're just going to make it an informational, but it shouldn't print anything because we're not doing any sort of validation on those. So the options would be you can make it an error, as you can see here. You can make it a warning, which just will give them a message, but allow them to go through. And then you can get the information, which is just the blue prompt that again just gives them a message, but it doesn't stop it from continuing on. So the work order type of making it mandatory, and then the type of message or the type of reaction you want for them not entering anything in can be used in combination here. So that's your setup. So once you have everything set up in the system, let's now walk through entering a maintenance request and then converting that into a work order. So I'm going to go back to my modules. And now I'm going to go to maintenance request, all maintenance requests. I'm going to go ahead and click new to start a new maintenance request. In my description, I'm going to put just kind of the same thing as we saw in our fault symptom. I'm going to put that the steering wheel is shaky. I'm next going to choose my asset and my functional location. So I'm going to hit the drop down and I'm going to look for an asset that is a vehicle. All right. So here's my options, and I'm going to go with the pickup truck. The pickup truck is having a shaky wheel problem. At this point in time, here is where my fault symptom can first be used. If I hit the drop down, again, I got that pre-existing list that I can choose from. As I mentioned earlier, if you had something that isn't in that list that someone was to put in, this is the point in time where you'd have to start filling in these lists. We already did that, so I'm going to go ahead and put shaky steering wheel. At that point, my fault area and my fault type already auto-populate in because I only had one entry of each of those. So as you can expect, D365 knew what to put in there, so it automatically put those in for me. If I had multiple areas or multiple types that I had indicated under the symptom, these would have been kept blank. I would have had to drop down, and then I would have to choose what the area was and what the fault type was. So once I have that information entered in, I'm going to keep everything else as is. I'm going to click OK to create my maintenance request. My maintenance request is created. At this point in time, I can see the asset fault from my action pane. Under the maintenance request, view asset fault, and here is the information that I've entered in so far. So at this point in time, if someone were looking at this and if they knew what the actual cause was or what the actual remedy was, they could click the add line and then they could put those causes in, or they could hit the add line for the remedy and they could put those remedies in. And
Well,
at
I
this
think
point,
it's,
go ahead, Marley.
I'm sorry, Chris. I
Okay.
just was going to say, I think it's important to mention too that you can have more than one fault on a work order because a combination of faults might indicate a different kind of problem. So if somebody's seeing 3 different problems, they can list those in the maintenance request so that you can get more information.
Yep, good point. So one thing you could do right now is you have the asset here, you got the information here. So someone maybe new to maintenance, maybe someone that just wanted to see what was out there, you could just click the asset, which will take you into the asset master. And from the asset master, you could go under general, and then you got your faults under related information. And this is going to give you all the faults that have ever been entered against this asset. So at this point in time, you could put in that symptom, that area, that type were recorded on that maintenance request, and you can see previous causes and previous remedies that have been entered in. And that could give you an idea of what maybe the problem is this time. I mean, this is kind of a knowledge garden you can build over time that would help you see just previous things and again, the previous resolutions that took place. So I'm going to go back to my maintenance request. At this point in time, we're just going to assume that we don't know what's causing this. We don't know what the remedy is. We're good with continuing with this maintenance request. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to convert this into a work order. Here's my work order information. I'm going to go ahead and just choose a type of maintenance. Click OK. And then we wait. All right, we got our work order now. Work order 110. As we can see down here, I'm going to go ahead and click on the hyperlink. All right, I'm in my work order. Same thing as we saw the maintenance request. Under the work order asset, there's the asset fault. And then here is the asset fault that I just entered in. On the maintenance request, it carried over because of the asset management parameter that we looked at earlier. We said, yes, we want to copy those over. So it made it to the work order. At this point in time, you can transact this work order as you normally do, working on it, assigning it, whatever steps it needs to go through. But what I want to show you at this point is, remember we said that those values had to be entered, and we said if they weren't entered, we were going to give an error message. So at this point, I'm going to go through the states, and I'm going to change this to an in progress. Get my actual start time. And then I'm going to try to change it to work complete. So if you recall, completed is where we had the validation all turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. It's going to try to give it an end time. And you can see I got a message that prompted in here. It's still in progress. It didn't change my state. So if I click on the bell, it's going to tell me there was an error message. And if I go to the message details, it's going to give me a message that I did not enter in that asset information or the fault information as we said we wanted to. So it's going to stop the person from being able to classify this as being completed until they put that information in. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my asset fault on the work order. And then from here, I can click the add line to put in my cause. And I'm going to put my cause as, what did I say I was going to put for that?
Was it alignment, wheel alignment?
Wheel alignment. Thank you. I'm going to put wheel
Yeah.
alignment for the cause. And as Marlene mentioned, I could put other cause symptoms in or other causes in that may have been the causes. And then in my remedy, I'm just going to say that we did routine maintenance to just fix it. Nothing crazy. And again, I could have had multiple in here as well. So that's entering the information in. At this point in time, I should be able to go back. I should be able to go to my update work order state and now change it to completed. Put my end time in. And now it's at a completed state. So that's kind of running through the process and entering in on the maintenance request, carrying it over to the work order, and then being able to see the information from the work order. Let's quickly take a look at the reporting pieces that exist in the system. So under asset management, I can go to inquiries and I can go to reports. Under the inquiries, we have an asset fault section. And within there, you have asset faults. And if I click on that, that's just going to dump out an entire list of all the asset faults that have ever been recorded, regardless of the asset, regardless of the location. So it's just a one-stop screen that you could go to, dump into Excel, filter it as you want, be able to slice and dice this as you want to be able to see some information from here. A second screen is to go to the asset fault analysis. So this screen is going to start out with asking for parameters of the type of information that you want to report off of. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this AK-201 asset, which I've set up some previous information in for. Level 0 means I want to see them where they exist within the functional location. So you could do summarizing based upon looking at only location ones, level 1s or 2s or 3s, but 0 means it's just going to find it where it's at. I'm going to click OK. So at this point in time, it tells me it's found 7 symptoms out there. So this is another screen where I can slice and dice things. So I'm going to say, okay, hey, show me the asset, show me the symptom, show me the area, show me the type. Let's update that calculation. And now it's going to show me for this asset all the different symptoms that have ever been reported, and then how many times they were reported, all the different areas, and then all the different types. And then it's going to show me the percentage of instances where it was a blown fuse, or where it was a calibration problem, or where it was dirt, or where it was overheating, and then how many times it was the electrical as the issue. So you can see for calibration problem, I've had 2, but one time it was electrical 50% of the time, one time it was mechanical 50% of the time. And then it goes down to the actual fault type. So for a calibration problem, that was an electrical, that was a catastrophic, 100% of the time that has been an instance that occurred. And then overall, what is the probability of these 3 things ever appearing? You can see 14.29% of these 3. So it's just another way that you can see, some slicing and dicing and the probabilities and things that you could be looking at that maybe you should put some preventative maintenance type of things in because you're seeing things that are happening on a regular occasion. And maybe you need to look at something on that location or look at something on that asset type or asset, but just some more information that the system can give you. And then another spot is the asset fault cost control. Basically the same sort of screen where you give it the level, give it your financial dimensions, give it the asset you want to look at, click OK. You can slice and dice the information. I'm going to look at the same way we were looking at that previous screen. Let's calculate the cost. Sorry. And then this time you can see that we're actually getting the actual cost. So the budget would be looking at the forecast. So if I had set up a forecast for how many hours I thought I was going to take, or the material I thought that needed to be consumed into a work order of that type, and then the actual costs are going to be the actual costs that were recorded and posted into that work order. And then it's going to break it down into the corrective, preventative, investment, or the committed based upon how that work order type was set up. So those are values that get entered onto the work order type. So the last report that I want to show really quick is under reports. I'm going to go to assets. I'm going to go to asset fault here. So this report is another one-stop shop. You're going to put a date range in. So show me all the asset information for a given range. Again, you got your filter options of what you actually want to search for. I'm going to click OK. And this time I'm going to get a PDF, and the PDF is really going to show me basically all the stuff that we've seen in the previous inquiry screens. So again, it's a one-stop shop that right here, it's showing me all of the different combinations of things that were found for that asset, which again we saw in an inquiry screen. And then it's going to further slice and dice it down based upon giving me some statistics showing me the MTBF. It's going to show me the combination of the different instances that occurred. And then it's going to give me a little pie graph down here that shows me the percentages of times that these symptoms have occurred, these areas have occurred, types, and so on and so on. So again, it kind of takes those inquiry screens that we just saw and puts it all into one PDF that you can look at. So hopefully this gives you some ways that you can see that you can use some of the out of the box inquiries and reportings to gauge some information about the faults you're seeing, and then things that you can do to handle those.